I am going to introduce our presenters, and we are super lucky tonight is that we are actually getting a crew, if you say it, of the from Cain Super Sires. Originally, we had invited Dusty to join us, and that expansion has now spanned out and includes Aaron as well as Earl. So we have a whole group from Cain Super Sires, and we're super excited to listen to them and get their perspective. If you aren't familiar with Cain Super Sires, they raise a large number of show pigs, and a lot of those are shipped out our direction. As far as just in our own county where I live, there's quite a few kids that have the privilege of driving some of those pigs, and I know that Dusty himself is on the road today to deliver a large load even up into Montana in that area. So we're super excited and thankful for their support of our youth and 4-H and FFA members across the country and for their willingness to join us. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Aaron, and he's going to add to his introduction, and we'll let him share his screen. As we go along, just one more thing is if you do want to ask questions, please unmute yourself and ask questions. It's much more pleasing when this is interactive and people have questions to ask. So please do that. You can also put them in the chat box, and I will try to interject them as we go along too. And somebody did make a comment that we get 3 generations of the Cains, and you are exactly right. So we're happy to have them on. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Aaron.
Perfect. All right. Oh, what happened? Oh, can you see us now?
Yes, we can. So welcome. Yes. Maybe Earl can slide. There you go. Slide you a little bit. There. Now we can see Earl. Perfect. Thank you. Thanks for getting on, guys.
No problem. So like you said, I'm Aaron Cain, and then this is my grandpa Earl Cain, and then my dad's actually in the room too. Lee, he's off to the side. But like you said, yeah, we've been raising show pigs for quite a few years, and we're really excited to do what we do, and we love raising those show pigs and trying to help people in learning how to make decisions on what pigs to show and what they should look like, and try to help them as best as we can. So that's kind of what we do.
Well, we also help our people with feed as recommendations that we do and selections as they might ask on the phone what we think. We're glad to help those people and explain to them what we think the pigs look like and what they'll end up being as well.
So yeah, with that, do you have any questions to start off with, or how do you want us to kind of go about it?
I think you're good. You can just start, and we'll have them interject as we go along.
Perfect. So I'm going to kind of pick this up, slide it closer, and then pull up a picture, and we'll kind of start talking about how we kind of start what we look for when we are going through and looking for our pigs that we're going to pick out to either put on the sales or pigs that we're going to get ready to show ourselves. If I can just find a picture here quick. Let's see. All right, great. Oh, that's not the one I want. Wrong one, sorry. Let's see, where'd it go? See that picture?
What Aaron's looking for is one of the gilts that we would had on our last sale that exemplifies what we're trying to do as far as select pigs that have great feet and legs. And here's a picture of this. She's a knock and boots gilt that we had on the last sale. And as we analyzed her, from the ground up, we think she had really correct and good sized feet and toes, heavy boned, cool fronted with a lot of extension of neck and tall at the point of the shoulder. And as you analyze her back through her rib cage, her center rib or center shoulder is opened up. And yet, look at her from the top side, she has all kinds of product and muscle. As you could see her move, she just was freaky as far as her feet and legs and her design. and always move with their heads up. And this is an example of one of the pigs that we think is good and can work for our people.
Yeah, and like you said, when we're talking about this stuff, there's lots of things that kind of go into picking out pigs to start off with, whether you're just like, for instance, when we go through and we pick out the pigs for the sale, we just kind of look for, different things, and then how we think how we project them to be when, you show them at 250 to 280 pounds. Me personally, the first thing I like to kind of do when we're going through there is just design. And basically when that is, just staying level from her blade back into her hip. And I'm going to draw just kind of what I'm talking about. Like that needs to be a perfectly straight line. When that's level, and then when you have a good set to her hock, which you can see in this general region right here, how it's not straight, but yet it doesn't have so much set that it's clear underneath of her. It's a good set, and it's able, once you see that, she can flex and really move like she needs to. And that's a big thing. Like you said earlier, we're really into helping our customers feed their animals, but it's hard. You can't feed animals that are flexible and are able to float across the ring. And that's the biggest thing. Flexibility and being able to move and having that makes it a lot easier for our customers and that stuff when they're talking about trying to project one as you see it as a 60 pounder and how you think it'll look as a 180 or 280 pounder, excuse me. I don't know. What else do you think about projection wise? Along with bone structure. Yeah. And then, like you said earlier, you can tell that this one's forearm and foot and that general vicinity is really massive. And that's a big thing. In order for the show pig industry, having big feet and big forearms is very important, along with having a good and a big rear leg. Now, when you're doing that, when you are wanting to pick out big feet, you want to make sure they're up on their toes, which she obviously is, as you can see there and right there, that her dew claws are still up off the ground. Every once in a while, you get these ones that are so big-footed and so big that they put their dew claws on the ground. And then when that happens, that just causes them, when they get older, to have sore feet and then not want to float around the ring and move as much as the exhibitor that's showing him would like him to be. I don't know what
Another thing that might enter into it for a lot of people is the genetics on both sides of these show animals. We like to select boars that we think complement our sow herd. And so when we're breeding and making these show pigs, we want animals that make our hogs better. And in this instance, the sire of this gilt is a boar we called Knockin' Boots that we bought in Louisville. But we thought that he would add a little bit of look, some structure, along with some mass. And he's did that, which is beneficial to us and as well as our customers. I think it'll take us to the next step.
Yeah, like you said, making sure that we select the right boars and keep back the right gilts when we're picking replacements in order to, to breed on, and making sure we have that right match to produce show pigs that we think are going to be very competitive in any level, whether it's county or state fairs or whether it's a national show. But that's what we try to do. And we try to take that stuff very, very seriously. And because we want to, produce the best show pigs for our customers. Do you have any questions so far? Or anybody? Doesn't matter.
This is your time. You guys can unmute yourself and ask questions. Or you can put them in the chat box, either way. There's a question in the chat box that says, when you're trying to pick pigs from a group of like 50, how do you sort them to even know where to begin?
Well, I think it's kind of the individual's preference. And as you pick your pig, sometimes it helps to know who's going to be judging the show that you're going to, and sometimes it don't. But I think the best thing to do is just take one that has a good eye appeal. As you visualize them, they're balanced from the side. They have some heaviness of structure along with product.
Come over here. Is it live?
I think that's the best way. As you look at a group of 50, just pick the one that hits your eye and fits that scenario.
And then another question I see here in the chat is that what is it meant from the ground up? Basically what he's saying is start at the base. So what he's saying is start at their feet and work up. So whether, like I said about the pastern set, you want them to be up on their toes in order so they can flex. And then you go to the bone work and you say, okay, that one's got a big forearm, and then we're working up. And she designs from her blade back into her hip. Okay, she's level design. And yes, she's still got body, as you can see in the picture. And plus, she's still really extended up through her front end. And that's kind of what he's saying, is just start from the ground up. Because if you don't have one that can move off their feet and legs, it's going to throw everything else off. Let's see. And then male or female, I wouldn't say it really matters too much whether it's male or female. You just kind of want to pick ones out that are just complete. Like this, like this girl here, you can tell that she's she's level design, and yet she's big-footed, big forearm, yet still has that center rib and still carries that extension and has muscle. And I think it doesn't matter really if it's male or female, as long as you have one that is built right and still has those kind of extra traits that you're looking for. All right, yeah, you want to take that one? It says, we tried to farrow a couple of gilt, and then do you have any suggestions on how to feed these gilts while pregnant to help with farrowing yeast?
I think it's important that we keep these bred gilts in a good working condition. We can feed too much, and so then you have internal fat within that sow or gilt, as well as making the pigs bigger than they need to be, so that they're able to farrow with these.
5 to 6 pounds.
Yeah, I think, as Lee's saying in the side here, 5 pounds in most cases is probably enough, depending on the weather. If it's extremely cold, you might have to feed a little more. But we need to keep those sows' body well maintained without making them over-conditioned and making the pigs bigger than they need to be. That's the best for piggies and success in a farrowing operation.
Okay. And then at 50, 60 pounds, how important is muscle, heavy muscle versus light muscle?
I think in a lot of instances, some people think that those pigs at 50 pounds need to have more muscle than what's really required. I think if you analyze the pigs from ground up and you analyze the base width on both ends, that's an indicator of how much natural spring of rib, how much natural body and muscling those hogs will have as they mature and at the end. So I would prefer that those hogs don't have an overabundance of muscle, but I don't think they need to be real narrow-based or not have the ability to put on muscle as they develop and get to market weight.
And then, is there anything we really don't like about this gilt? That's a kind of a hard. I mean, we thought this gilt was one that was pretty special. We thought that she was probably one of the better ones that we've ever seen come off of our farm. We thought she was one that put all the extra pieces together while still having all the basic fundamentals. She's really just level design, and then but yet she still has lots. She still has lots of muscle. She's really, really extended, and yet she's way, way massive boned. So we thought she was really, really special.
Simplified with these knocking boots.
Yeah, and like my dad says over here in the corner, that's kind of what most of the knocking boots pigs are looking like. He's throwing pigs that are really extended and really heavy bone, but yet still are able to handle it off of both ends and still have that center body and center rib like my grandpa was talking about just a second ago. I mean, just having that much body and mass and just still being able to carry it on those big, big forearms and big hind legs, yet still throwing that really extended look. And there's sometimes you get pigs that are really extended, yet they don't have the mass amount of bone and body as this gilt does. And then you've got pigs that have the bone and body that this gilt does, but doesn't have the extension. So I think that this gilt has all the basics, but also has all of the extras to go with it. And then I've heard judges talk about having good pin set. What exactly are you looking for, and how do you explain that? You want to go ahead and explain pin set, or you want me to say it?
A pin set has to do with the hip structure. Yeah. If the angle of the hip, if the pin set is way low, they would have a tendency to have that individual would have its feet and legs too far under it. And so we need those pin bones leveler with the rest of the body so that we can pull the rear leg back and have functionability as far as the rear leg structure and hip.
Let's see.
And obviously a wide pin set gives you a chance to have more muscle.
Yes,
Right.
and pin set has to do with, is the same thing as base width. If the pin bones are spread wide, then we have a big hip. And from a female standpoint, if the pin bones are pulled apart, ease of farrowing would be indicated there as to be a lot better instead of being very narrow pinned and narrow based. Those hogs would have a harder time with pig production.
And then, does color matter? I think it's kind of a personal preference, really. But personally, to me, color really doesn't matter. An all black one, all white one, blue butt, whatever. As long as you have a pig that is a solid pig, you know, and have all the basics, covers all the basics, checks all the boxes. I think color really doesn't matter. It's more of a personal preference. I mean, I don't know if you think.
No, I think that's exactly right.
If you want us to, we can go through and find another picture of it, and then go through a barrel if you wanted us to instead of a gilt. I guess we can go ahead and do that.
Hey, can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
First of all, thanks Cain Family for doing this for us. But so when kids are picking out little pigs to raise, we hear a lot about making sure they pick one with good structure. Is there a way to explain to young 4-Hers what good structure looks like in a little pig that the kids could be looking for?
I think you start at the toes. The toes need to be even. They need to all be pointing straight forward, the same direction. And then as you would move up, the pastern area is between the hoof and the dew claw. They need to be relatively strong pastern. We don't want weak pastern hogs. That's a abnormality that we want to avoid. So we want them up on their pasterns. And so and then as you move on up the legs, we want that bone work to be clean, but we want it to have big circumference, heaviness of structure, heaviness of rib cage, and that whole thing blends together. But we start at the toes, and we work up through the bone work, the pasterns, and clear up into the forearm, and then on up into the center rib and center body, and look for spring of rib, width of base, and evenness of toes is a general statement, I would say. But from the ground up.
Thank you.
All right, so now what we're going to do is I'll switch to a different picture here of a barrel, and then we'll kind of talk about him, and then it's kind of some of the similar things, and then some things that are a little different compared to that gilt that we just looked at.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is a barrel that was in on the same sale. He's actually a crossbred barrel, which is the gilt was a crossbred as well. But as you can see, he's still got that crazy front end, the length of neck. Whoops. Yeah. So yeah, his length of neck is still still really extended, which we like to see. And then along with that, he's still built really well in his pastern set. which is right there. And then along with that, he's still really heavy bone through his forearm. And then as you look back and start going up towards the top, you see that he's really got lots of middle, really depth of body, and still that center rib. And then when you get out to his hip, like we talked about earlier, it's super level. I mean, you can see that they basically lay a flat level on there, and you can tell that it ain't going to move anywhere. So and then that just helps also when talking about, showing them and moving them around the ring. That's another way, to help soundness and just another basic trait that needs to be checked in order to have a show pig that they can be very competitive. I don't know, you want to add to about this Hampshire Shire barrel?
Well, I think the other thing is you might point out his base width up front.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah, he's wide fronted, and then as we talked about the pin bones a minute ago, the pin bones back here down. Yeah,
yep.
The pin bone is about right here, down through his hock and down to the ground. He needs some straightness there, but yet as he would move, the flexibility in this hock region is, as he moves forward, is really good. And so he can power off those rear legs, and still at the same time he'd be moving straight forward and straight back. And it's because the angulation of his pin bones and hip to hock is what makes that work in all coordination.
And you hear a lot of people talking about hip to hock to ground, and that being straight, and that having that same angle, so that we keep those hind legs as you watch them walk away from you, keeping them in a good angle, and so there's no bow or no anything like that. A good rule of thumb maybe sometimes is if they're walking away from you and they'll show you the bottom of their foot, their flexibility is pretty good.
Yeah, and flexibility is really important. You want to be able to be flexible and be athletic and not be too straight, so they start, flexibility is very, very key. It looks like we got some more stuff in it. Yeah, does the size matter of a pig that it is built as well as a big litter? So basically, if you're looking at a litter mates, if they're different sizes, if they're built good.
No, I don't think it matters. Depending, your outcome is what the show weight would be. How old can they be? How big do they need to be in order to make weight? But as far as litter mates, one being a little bit smaller than the other one, I don't think that matters. They just probably had a better place on the dinner plate for mom as they got started up. And so they just got behind, and they always maintain that. As long as the health is good on those pigs and they have big ribs and lots of production traits are taken on feed, everything will be correlated, and it all ought to turn out to be what you need at the end.
Aaron, there's a question that came privately that's connected to that. It says, what is the average daily gain for a pig? So it would help them decide what size to buy, I think.
Yep.
I think from 1.5 to 2 is kind of an average pounds per day of gain. And a lot of that has to do with how people feed those pigs. What percent protein, what the quality of the feed is, what the freshness of water, everything in the environment around that pig has to do with what that rate of gain is going to be. And health. We try to maintain health protocol here. The pigs have a wide range of vaccinations that we give them so that it protects them when they get out in the workplace, you might say. And the beginning health of that pig is extremely important as far as the ability to gain and to grow, along with the quality of feed and the environment that the people provide for those pigs.
Pound and 3/4 would be a good ball.
Yeah, somewhere in that range.
Okay.
Wait, Aaron, before you move on, though, there's one more connected to this picture.
Okay.
It says, sorry, let me read it so I get it. I wrote it down. It says, this barrel looks shorter-sided and deeper bodied than the gilt picture. If you were selecting between the two, what's most important when they're little?
Actually, the length of body of the barrel is probably very comparable to the gilt. I think their frame size would be almost identical. I would say these would be in the 6.5 range, as you would be scoring them from 1 to 10.
I think it's natural for the barrows to probably have a little more rib than the females.
Yeah, Yeah, like you said, the barrels sometimes more naturally have more rib and maybe aren't quite as long bodied. I guess you would say, but it really doesn't matter. You don't want one that's so short that it can't, and squatty that it can't really grow and perform. Like we just said, with that 1.5 to 2 pounds a day. But you don't want one that's so long and narrow and doesn't have any middle at all. So just kind of having that happy medium ballpark would be the most beneficial. So we got some more questions here in the chat. Do you recommend wet feeding show pigs? I'd say that's kind of a personal preference in a roundabout way.
I think when you start to use wet feed, sometimes maybe one of those animals needs a little more body and needs a little more rib. And for us, we can take and maybe add some rolled oats or add some of that stuff to expand the rib. And by using wet feed and slopping them, we can sometimes enhance that internal body mass and rib and give them the appearance of having more lower rib and more flank is when it becomes beneficial, I think.
And sometimes it will increase consumption. It's just like anything. If you can change that diet a little bit, make the feed more palatable because you did wet feed them, maybe they'll take on more feed and you can get better rate of gain as far as that rib cage and body that Lee's talking about.
Yeah. So then kind of the next one is, can just one pig grow well, or should you have more than one? Pigs are kind of social. They're a social animal. So I know that when you kind of move them from place to place, if they have a buddy or two to kind of stay with them, just so they don't feel like they're all alone, and they won't be quite as scared. So they might start off eating a little better if they have, one or two buddies to go with them. But can one grow well? Yeah, I said yes, it can. It just might not take off just as fast if you move it to a new spot that it's not used to being at. But once it gets used to being there, yeah, it should be fine. I mean, just go and grow like a weed.
Competition is good when it comes to eating. I think one of them tries to maybe eat just a little faster to get more of it than the other one. And so there is something to be said for having, a little bit of competition and making them eat a little better, and the social aspect that Aaron talked about.
And then for what does the daily diet look like? I don't know if you want to go with that one.
What does the daily diet look like?
Yeah.
Most of those people will be using a complete feed.
Yeah.
And that'd probably be the easiest thing I would say for most of the youth that you're dealing with that are just going to have show pigs are probably going to buy a complete feed, whether it's a pelleted feed or a ground feed. Probably is a personal preference too. Most of the clients that we work with will feed pelleted feeds too. I think it probably stays a little more consistent. And then obviously the freshness part of that, if we can buy a pelleted feed or buy a complete feed and only get enough to maybe feed for a week or 10 days and then be able to keep it fresh, obviously that'll let us keep the growth and keep everything like we want it to be then.
And then we'll feed them twice a day at home. And then just kind of depending how much you give them, just kind of depends on, I don't know, how much you'd like to start out with. What do you think?
I think then it becomes a little bit more a projected thing. For us, when we're getting our pigs ready for these boys and these girls, our kids, weighing them once a week, and so we know where they're at, so we know that how fast they're gaining, and we can kind of project that out then to know where we need to be at the end. And so then as you start to feed, say I'm feeding 6 pounds a day, and they're cleaning it up and everything's going great, but I figure out that, hey, I need to grow a little faster to be where I want to be at my show, then maybe I have to up that intake to 7 or 7.5 pounds a day, and then keep weighing to see how much I've gained over that week's period, so that I can keep projecting that out to where I know I'm going to hit that target mark when I get ready to go to the show.
And then what age pigs should be for a market fair. What we usually try to do ours about 6 months, I'd say. I mean, right, 6 to
6.5,
yeah.
to 6.5 is a good ballpark, I think.
Yeah. So yeah, anywhere from 6 to 6.5 is what we try to make our pigs when we're taking them to, whether it be the county fair, state fair, or another show like that. And then kind of what feed do we recommend? Like you said, it's more of a complete feed. Here at home, we feed Mormon Show Tech. That's what we use. But as long as you have a feed that is a complete feed and is meeting the needs, the dietary needs of your animal, and yet it stays fresh and stuff like that. It's just kind of a personal preference. And you have stuff to add to that.
Well, and I think within the group, as we feed our show pigs, especially towards the end, they're probably going to be a little more individually fed. And so that way you can decide whether we need to have an 18 on this animal, or I need to back it down. This one has an extreme amount of muscle and back it down to a 14 to where we can keep it in type and kind, to where we can get him to have that flexibility, design, look, and everything that we want to try to have at the end. And so not all pigs are going to get, it's not just a cookie cutter thing as far as every one of them get fed a 16 and then switch to a 14 or then switch to an 18. I think it becomes an individual basis depending on muscle, shape, width, fat, leanness, some of those kinds of things. And then we try to get them to where we have them at that target at the end.
And that kind of leads into the next question, is how does the percent and the feed change throughout their weight and age? Yeah, I just kind of mentioned that, just kind of, making it more individualized and kind of seeing what your pig needs. If it's, if it's got a lot of muscle but not a whole lot of middle, well, you probably back the protein down and up the fat just a little bit and try to even that out. And if it doesn't have as much muscle, then you'd up the protein, that way you can help try to, crisping them up just a little bit. But it just kind of depends on the pig, depending on what percent through that. And then how much do you feed a day? Like you said, also kind of just depends on the size of the pig and what the pig looks like and how much he weighs and stuff like that for your target date at the end. But we try to do about 6-ish pounds or so, I'd say, a day. And we try to do it twice a day. We try to feed once in the morning and once at night. So it'd be 3 pounds or so in the morning and then 3 pounds again in the evening. That way they're not getting, just keeping it split up so they know they're not getting too much at one time, I guess. And I would say. And
I think sometimes just the phenotypic look tells you if he looks like he doesn't look as full and doesn't look as full in his flank and his lower rib, we may have to, up the feed a little bit. If we're getting enough there and he's starting to grow away from us and we know we need to have him slowed down a little bit to meet our target weight at a certain show, we may be able to slow him down a little bit by giving him a little less feed or maybe add some bulk as far as beet pulp or rolled oats or some of those kinds of products to slow him down just a little bit or lower the protein just a little.
Hey, Aaron, before you move on, there's one that was sent to me connected to that, is about that you said individually feeding. So do you not recommend, or you do recommend using a self-feeder where they can eat as much as they want?
Go ahead.
Normally when we're feeding the pigs for our kids and doing that, most of the time they're getting hand fed. That way we can control. If we're hand feeding those and we know that they're two things. I think we know that their health is good because when we're hand feeding, they're jumping up, coming to the feeder. And so we know that they feel good right away all the time because we know they're there. The other thing I think it does is as we start to do that, we can control the outcome of how fast they're growing and where we want them to be at the end and keep our target weight a little bit. I think a person can be on a self-feeder, like as far as now, say if a person's getting some younger pigs in here at 60, 70 pounds, I think we can be on that self-feeder probably the last 30 to 60 days. It's time to hand feed those and see if we can get them in more of a developed area with certain different feeds and maybe have them singled off to where we can control them and start to make them look like we need to have them look to be able to do as well as we can do at the hog show.
And another thing you might add to that, as the kids go to the fair, you want those, if those pigs are being hand fed and they're used to eating out of a pan or a trough that we hang on a gate, they're more apt to eat after you get to the show. If they're used to the routine, you come to the pan and you give them the feed, they get up, they come and eat instead of being on a self-feeder. I think that's important.
And then our supplements recommended are just as needed. I would say, I don't know, what do you think about supplements? I mean, I think different supplements kind of do different things. So I would say it's more of or as an ad, just as needed. One thing though that I would say that we put in most all our feeds is rolled oats or something like that, which rolled oats will just help, keep their gut good and keep them good in that aspect. So we usually try to add at least rolled oats, and then just as needed on other stuff, whether it be a more body or I don't know, or a Game On, which is the Sunglow product, or a S'more Fill or something like that. But I'd say it's more of a just as needed. But one thing I would say is you have a rolled oats or a barley or something of that aspect in order to keep their gut good while you are throughout the whole time, I would say. And then another feed question is about the Baleen. Just kind of what is your opinion on it? I don't know if you want to take the Baleen thing or.
Most of these pigs that we're working with today have enough muscle. As you work in the marketplace, we have to sign an affidavit every week right now that says our pigs are free of Baleen before we send them the pack. And I think as you look to the future, I think Baleen will be a thing of the past for most people. And I think I had a call from Texas here last week. They just wanted to know what they could, if we had a hog market up here that would be better than what they've got. I think they've got 11 cents at Fort Worth. They got 15 cents a pound in San Antonio. And I told him, I said, well, you guys are going to have to make a rule that those hogs haven't been fed Baleen, and you'll guarantee that they haven't been before a lot of the major packers will even buy those hogs. And so my opinion of Baleen is that we don't really need it.
In the same aspect, if I had an individual that I thought needed to maybe add some growth, or I needed to have a little more muscle or width, I think we can add a little bit of Baleen and maybe put some mass on and add some muscle and maybe help in a little bit of growth if we needed that extra punch too. And so it probably wouldn't hurt, there. But most of the time it's probably within those last 3 weeks before the show.
And then kind of a question that doesn't really have much to do with feed, but about pigs, keeping them in and outside. Here at home, we like to keep all our show pigs inside the barn where it's bedded, and it's heated in the wintertime, and yet still is able to have airflow and fans and stuff here in the summertime when it's warm. And we'll actually open garage door. We have garage doors on our barns, and we'll open them up. And then when we take them outside, to exercise them. We'll try to exercise them every day the last month to 2 months before the show, and that'll be outside. We'll start out when we first start exercising them. We'll do it once a day for probably 5 to 10 minutes, and then just kind of get them used to getting outside, exercise them, getting used to that routine. And then as they get more in shape, we'll have them outside 15, 20 minutes once a day. That way they're getting exercise. But when we have them out, we practice them like we're going to show them. We don't just let them out there, walking around. We get them out there. We drive them. We try to get them whip trained, get their heads up, just like they will be in a show ring. That way, when you get to the show, you can basically drive them wherever you want to drive them, and they're used to the whip, and they're used to, being out of their pen and not just going to kind of run around when you get to the show. So that's kind of my input on the inside outside thing. Just kind of, we keep ours inside with heat and fans and that stuff, but when we take them outside, it's for exercise. But when we do it, we try to do it like we're going to show them. And then the best bedding, as you can see in the picture, we use wood shavings is what we use. That's basically what I would probably use as the best. I don't know if you guys think that.
That's right.
Yeah, that's what we use here is those wood shavings, and which seems to work really, really good for us. And then how do you keep the head up? Well, it just kind of, like I said, it starts at home. What we do is we try to get them out, and when we get them out to start with, we get them out usually. If you have a couple, do a couple at a time. The first few times when you get them out, and then as you get them out later, after they get used to going outside and used to get them out of their pen, then we start using our whip, is what we usually use here at home. And what we do is we just try to tap them underneath the chin, and that way they know that when they get their head up, and just keep tapping them underneath the chin. And sometimes they're really smart, and it takes a couple times, and sometimes it you know how sometimes it takes a long time, and just takes a little more work. But yeah, as long as you just keep working them and hitting them underneath the chin. And when I say that, I'm really I'm talking about like right in this area here. We want to be underneath of them. If you start to hit them up on top of the nose or in the side of the face, then they'll start ducking their head or turning their head one way or another. But really making sure that you get underneath the chin to keep them up is the best way that we know how to do it here at home. And then, so how big of an area for 2 pigs? I don't know how. I mean, what size are our pens here when we got a couple of them in there?
Like 10 by 20.
Yeah, so yeah, ours are 10 feet by 20 feet here at home when we have a couple pigs in a pen. But what we try to do is when we get our show pigs, we try to keep them by themselves as best as we can individually. But yeah, 2 pigs and 10 to 20, yeah, would work perfect. Stopping sunburns. Basically how
keep them out of the sun.
Yeah.
We
Well,
keep
yeah.
them shade.
Yeah.
Their shade.
Which, like, yeah, we keep them inside, but we still have problems. So basically, when you take them outside, you just to exercise them or stuff like that. Well,
We exercise and we'll exercise. If we have white ones, especially, we'll exercise early in the morning or real late in the evening. Not exercising those hogs in the hot of the day where the sun's right on top of them, so they do get red or get blistered up. Dark colored hogs and black hogs, for the most part, you don't see very much of it as far as getting sunburned unless they're just out for a prolonged period of time.
Yeah. So yeah, keeping them out for that 15 minutes mark, and then like he said, if you got white ones or stuff like that, try to get them out there before, as the sun's just coming up or as it's just going down, just to try to keep them out of the sun as much as possible. And then marshmallows. Yeah, that's a good idea. We use that too. We actually use marshmallow cream when we're setting up pigs to take these pictures for our online sale. And we think that works really, really good. Yeah, and I know that sometimes you got to do what you got to do, but I think the marshmallows are a really good idea. And basically, to keep your head up is just kind of a personal preference on how you get them trained. So whatever you got to do to get them trained, I'm all behind it and all for it. As long as we can get them shown like we need to, and that way we have the best ability or the best chance to end up in the winner's circle at the end of the day. Yeah, basically whatever it takes to keep your pig's head up, I'm all for it.
Aaron, I think there was one above that got missed about recommending what kind of show stick.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so basically for us, we use a whip is what we use here at home. I think for a whip, it just allows for more control, and it's not too heavy for a young exhibitor. And yet, when we use a whip, basically it makes it easier to get underneath that head to keep them up, like I was talking about earlier. Some people use a pipe or something like that, but I just think that a whip, for me personally, and how we do things around our houses, is using a whip. That way it's easier to keep their head up and stuff like that. Is what we would recommend for showing.
So there's another one that came to me that's connected to your bedding, as it says, what do you do for pigs that eat shavings?
Basically it just happens. I mean,
feed them a little bit.
Yeah, no, we got pigs that they just do. They like to chew on them and chew on everything. So just Just
it's not.
it doesn't hurt them or anything like that. Just keep the pens clean, you know, all the poop out of them and all that stuff, and then just, you know, keeping the shavings fresh. And then pigs like to have fresh bedding, and
It'll keep their hide.
yeah, and like he says in the background here, if you have fresh bedding and stuff like that, it'll keep their skin and hair and hide better, and that would also be a benefit to the animal as well. But yeah, they eat shavings. It's not really that big of a deal. I mean, our pigs do it here all the time. Our show pigs are always nuzzling around them and chewing on them and all that stuff. It's not a big deal. Just, you know, just keep their pens clean and keep that bedding fresh.
All right, I have two others that are not connected. One is at the Wyoming State Fair, they have started to classify pigs. Can you talk about what a hamp needs to classify as a purebred?
So I'll just pull up a picture right quick. Yeah, so right here, this barrel would classify as a Hampshire. Even the right here, basically what you need is you need to have black hind legs, and
I think each individual spot, depending on, like here in our part of the world, see, they'll have to be in a Hampshire class. They'd have to have pedigrees, or in a Yorkshire class, and so it's a little different than what you're talking about now. When they class them, or say down south when they're classing those, most of those have to look typically like this barrow does, having a full belt, white on both front legs. You know, no different than a red one looking like a Duroc. Yorkshire being all white with up ears. That same situation. Obviously, in our part of the world, pedigrees dictates whether they're pure or not.
Yeah, I think just an FYI where this is coming from is our Wyoming State Fair made it that if kids have pedigrees, they're automatically classed on whatever the pedigree says. Yep. If not, they can try to get classified into that division by appearance. So I think that's
Yep.
There you go. Yep.
I had one more that takes you back before you go on the list again here to selection. Is it said how important is the skull in terms of width of eyes?
I think that goes along with the bone and structure and stoutness. Width between those eyes, width between those ears, a stout skull, but yet still being clean and trendy in that jawline for most show pig guys is the best.
Yeah, but I mean, you still want to have a skull that's stout. You know, you don't want it to be so small-headed that it doesn't look proportional, and it doesn't look like they don't have any stoutness or feature or anything like that. But you don't want them to be so big-headed that it makes them look not extended, basically. So there's kind of a happy medium right there.
Okay, and then the other selection question, I don't know if you're circling, but the other one I have is, can you show us a picture of a pig that's not so good so we can see the difference?
No, because all the ones we have on here are pigs we put on our elite sale, and so we're not trying to have one of those.
That's what I thought.
Let's see. Any suggestions about loading pigs? Basically, when we're loading our show pigs that we've been, you know, getting ready to take to the show and stuff like that, though, if you practiced them, walking them, exercising them, you know, have them whip trained. You don't really have, I mean, they're used to doing things like that. So that helps. Make sure that you have, you know, some sort of panel or sorting board or something like that, just in case, you know, they get something in their mind that they don't want to go on there. But yeah, if you have them whip trained and stuff like that, really not any problem.
And sometimes I think, you know, they were talking about the marshmallow trick. If there's a series of jackpots in your guys' part of the world where they're maybe going to show multiple weekends in a row and they're going to be unloaded and loaded more than one time, sometimes putting them on and giving them a little treat after they're on or off the next time around will make it easier.
Mm-hmm. So let's see here. basics for looking for piglets. Basically, when they're on the sow, just making sure they got that good design. Really level topped. Still have some length in neck, and yet still you can tell if they got some bigger forearms and bigger hind legs for bone work and stuff like that. But yeah, just making sure that the design is the biggest key for one of the first basics when looking at real little piglets. What do you think about clipping pigs? Dad, you're the one that does a lot of clipping around here. I don't know if you want to kind of take that one.
I think the part about being able to clip them, there's two things. I don't think it makes them look natural if we shave it completely down, and so a little hair is better. As I start to work through that front end and do part of their head and neck, I think we can clip it a little tighter. It gives them the appearance of maybe being a little cleaner through that jawline and a little more extended up through that front end. Normally, as we do it, we'll have those guards, 1 or a 1A in that variance is about right.
Yeah. So yeah, just making sure that you don't want to shave them so far down. Like he said, make sure you have a guard. A little bit longer guard on there. Another thing to add to that, when you're clipping their tops, we use a little bit smaller guard to go right down the groove of their back, which basically what I'm talking about is just that part right there. Just kind of that way it makes it appear to have, to have a little bit more muscle definition. Then is it bad to use straw for bedding? I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I just think personally that the shavings are easier to clean and they stay fresher, and then that will allow the pig's skin and hair and hide to stay better and stay fresher looking. But that's kind of what I think about straw.
Straw there will help hold heat. Now,
Yep.
If you're outside in cold weather, straw is a good thing. But now if it's the summertime and we're trying to keep the pigs cool and still help with hair and skin condition, shavings would be better. But I actually think straw is the best if you're outside in cold weather, because it'll hold heat better.
Yep.
And would be better for the pigs.
Okay. And then, so how do you keep fat from the neck and jowl? It kind of starts with the pig. If they're built to have that extension and that extra look, then they usually don't have that fat on there. As some would have a little bit shorter neck, they'd be more natural.
Sometimes a little higher protein and a little less fat will help burn that off a little bit too.
Yeah, higher protein and a little less fat just to kind of help burn it off as well. How do you prep a pig for showing? So how do you prep them for showing? Basically, it starts at home. I would say, like I said earlier, getting them out, practicing showing them, getting their head up and driving them. But also, like he says, when we walk our pigs at home, we actually wash them at the same time. That way, they like to get outside and do it. When they get washed, they know when they get out of their pen to go outside, they're going to get washed. And then they really like that. So when we wash them and brush them every day, to keep their skin and hair looking good, and then make sure they have the right feeds and that stuff, along with really exercising them and getting them whip trained and stuff like that. Approximate, what is the cost of feed from the time you get them until the fair?
Depends what show, whether
It depends on your feed and what you're feeding. And it also depends on the price of corn and bean meal and that whole scenario. But as a rule of thumb, I would think you might be able to expect to spend $75 to $100 per pig, or more, depending on how much foo-foo you want to feed and those kind of things. But the basic diet And the basic feed cost, which should be somewhere around $75 to $100, depending on the price of feed, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah. So an easy ballpark for you, if you were figuring it home, for you guys figured it, is know that if I'm planning on feeding 6 pounds a day and my 50-pound bag costs whatever amount, and I'm going to have my pig on feed from whatever day I get him till my show, you're going to be able to come pretty close.
And then do you clip different breeds differently? I don't think.
I don't clip different breeds necessarily differently. Now, if I have a pig that's a little thicker and maybe a little wider made, not quite as extended, not quite as big, I may clip him a little tighter. If I have one that's a little more extended and maybe needs a little more rib shape and needs to have a little more body in his look, a lot of times I'll leave a little more hair on them. It'll make them look stouter. It'll make them look like they're a little bulkier. And so that probably dictates it more than what breed it is.
And then going back to the washing thing, what do you use to wash them? Do you use skin conditioners? Basically, I mean, it doesn't just any kind of soap really. I mean, it doesn't any kind of, and it doesn't really matter. I mean, we can use.
We actually use a foamer, which is a soap conditioner combination, and that helps condition the hide and as well as clean the hair and hide.
Yeah, and it makes it easier because then we're using that foamer, foaming them down, and you don't necessarily have to brush it, wash it off, do that whole thing. We'll foam them up, maybe brush that in, and then leave them and let them go walk for a while and then rinse it off right at the end. And so that's kind of how we handle them.
Yeah, but when we do wash them, we make sure that we brush that soap in and try to get them clean as best we can. That way we keep that skin and hair really looking fresh. And then what percent of feed do you start with? Basically,
most of those pigs, say if, as a ballpark, let's say we're getting 60 pounders in. I would say in that 60-pound range, we're going to be someplace between an 19% protein, something like that. And as we start to increase the weight, and depending on the pig's phenotype and the way he looks, we'll start to back that protein down.
And if you wash too often, does it affect the natural oils? No. Basically, we just try to do it. That's the main purpose for the conditioner. So we'll wash and condition usually every day. That way we just keep them fresh and keep them clean. That way, some of them white pigs, if you don't do that, their skin will start to stain and that stuff. So we want to just make sure that we get the pigs clean and that stuff. And that's the point of the conditioners, is to make sure that skin stays nice and fresh. And then how much feed do you use for one pig? Like you said, anywhere from about that 6 pounds per day ish. Just kind of depends on the pig, but anywhere in that general area. And then how do you dry your pigs? We usually don't. If it's nice outside, warm and sunny, we usually try to just leave it on there. It helps keep them cool. Yeah, but we brush them and that stuff after we rinse off the conditioner and the soap and that stuff. But we usually don't go and try to dry them. We just kind of leave the little bit of moisture on there after we brush them to help keep them cool on those hot days and those summer days. That way, after when you're walking them around, that they don't get hot and that stuff. And then like when we're at the show, we like to keep them wet and that stuff. When we go to the show ring, another reason is just to keep them, keep them calm and keep them cool and keep them looking good.
Okay, so first, whoever hijacked the screen, can you guys take your marker off the pig? I don't know who did that. So if you could, perfect, thanks. I want to learn how to do that. So whoever did that needs to show me how to do that sometime.
I like the drawings in the middle of the pig. That looks pretty good. Oh, I know. Hey, Don, I think you're muted.
Oh, good. You didn't hear the whole thing. I was saying whoever hijacked the screen to like clean it off. So I'm not sure. I don't know who knows how to do that, but sometime in my life you should teach me how to hijack the screen like that. So, it happened to Caleb Boardman on one of these, and he couldn't figure out how to make it quit. So, with that, does anybody else have questions? I didn't have any more on my list that was sent directly. Any other questions connected? All right, any more selection? We kind of got off on a little there with lots of other questions, but I sure appreciate these guys answering them all and taking care of you guys. Any other questions for them? All right, do you guys have final thoughts? Aaron, any of you guys?
Thanks for having us on here. We really like to, talk to people about the show pig industry and how to select for show pigs. I mean, we think it's very important to have, young exhibitors and that stuff wanting to be enthusiastic and learn about, trying to be better about and make themselves better about, picking out show pigs and being more competitive. And I think, that's a good thing. And having these people that want to, learn more and it just makes the whole show pig industry a better place. And we really enjoy it. If you have any questions, feel free to look for us after this. If you want to call or anything like that, you can go to our Facebook page, which is Cain Super Sires. We have our phone numbers and that stuff on there. Or just go to Cain Farms or Cain Super Sires. Just type in Cain Super Sires on Google. Our website will come up. Don't be afraid to call us, if you need show pigs or, just to have questions about, what to look for or stuff like that. We'd be glad to, help you and work with you. And then.
Well, and obviously, and with what Aaron's talking about, we'll actually have these sales with obviously the next 3 weeks or 4 weeks here where we're going to have more lots of pigs on. And if they need help with selection or want to ask about a certain pig, we're way more than happy to try to help, with selection too.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't hesitate to call with questions or if you need, want to talk about pigs or like you said, we got those online sales coming up. The first one's, next weekend, the 14th and 15th, and then we got another one at the end of March. So if you're looking for pigs or want to talk about pigs or talk about selection or anything, don't hesitate to give one of us a call. We'd be glad to talk to you.
I think that's a good comment, is that with technology and all the online sales, it's a great opportunity to go look at those pigs online and just evaluate pig after pig after pig. So I think that's
absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Well, that sounds good. With that is that, Aaron, I'm going to have you quit sharing your screen if you can,
Okay.
and then I'll share mine. All right. Well, we're going to, there's one quick question there before I leave. There's two questions maybe you can just quickly answer, and then we'll wrap her up for the evening. One is where you're located, like what?
So basically we are in Sheraton, Iowa, which is just an hour straight south of Des Moines is where we're at. So it's the south central part of Iowa.
And then it says, what is the baseline price for a piglet? Like, what is the range that they could pay for pigs?
You want to go ahead and take that one?
It depends. It varies. We'll have, like Dusty is out in your guys' area right now, and he'll have groups of pigs on there all the way from $200 to $1,000 and everywhere in between.
All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks for getting on. We sure appreciate it. It's been a joy to have all of you on there. So we took the evening from all three of you, and we're super thankful and appreciative of that. So, and appreciative of your support. So,
thank you.
All right. Well, that sounds good. If you guys that are on have other questions that you think of that we didn't get to cover tonight, you can sure send me an email as well. You should all have my email from the link, and then I can sure get those